I'm still at the office.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm recording now, so just so you guys know.
I have at least 20 more bottles of wine for us, so we're good.
Fantastic. So you're here for the long haul then?
I like how Joe's wearing a hat for this.
I mean,
should I take it off? I mean,
he's got the face for radio, so we're good here.
There we go.
Poor Joe.
Does that make you feel better?
Now you can see both our gray hairs.
Yeah, because I got more.
Welcome to the OG panel.
Yeah, I'm the all gray club over here.
You guys want to see my OG panel? It's right here.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Dodgeball Podcast. In this episode, we're going to take what I think is a much-needed break from the current dodgeball scene and kind of reminisce about the good old barnstorming days. And here to help me do that is Serge Ferrari, Joseph Colella, Kelly Salamoni, and Mark Acomb. Guys, thank you so much for hopping on and being willing to chat with me on this lovely Friday evening. I see you guys have your assortment of drinks. I'll just leave it at that in case anybody wants to question our fuel, I guess.
Cheers.
Yeah. Cheers, everybody. Let's just go ahead and start with introductions.
You hear that?
Glasses clink. That's a telltale sign of what this is going to be. So you've been forewarned. But let's go ahead and start with some quick intros. Serge, go ahead and start. So your full name, current team you play for. It shouldn't be a surprise, and how long you've been actually playing competitive dodgeball.
My full name is Serge Ferrari. I play for San Diego Rise, and I've been playing for I think 13 years, since 2005.
Nice. Joseph?
Math checks out.
My name is Joe Colella. I have been playing dodgeball for 12 years now, since 2006. I currently play for the Open Division, Arsenal, and then for co-ed, I play for Echo.
Awesome. Kelly?
Hi, I'm Kelly. I've been playing for 12 years as well, like Joe. And I play for the women's division and the captain of Beavers. And I play right now, currently, for Alliance in co-ed.
Get juicy.
Let's get real juicy.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I stopped myself. Steve, you're welcome.
I appreciate it. That's just I foresee a lot of editing in my future, but that's okay. Mark, how about you go? You go ahead now.
Well, I'm Mark Acomb. I am the head of Elite Dodgeball, co-founder of USA Dodgeball, playing competitively since 2008. Before that, in all kinds of places, and I am the captain of Riot.
Fantastic.
Well, Riot player right now. Was captain of Riot.
Oh, man.
The new captain.
Alex was captain this year.
Okay.
It's like a rotational captain basis, or?
Gotta mix it up every now and then.
Nice. Different leadership. I like it. Are you feeling better, sir? For those of you that have maybe listened to the full 2.5-hour podcast that was dropped a week ago prior to this one's release, how are you? In a 2-3 sentence answer.
Doing a little bit better. Literally in the mad dash of getting everything done for Worlds. So I had my my down week, and it's back into the grind to get everything ready for that. I would say really check in with me after Worlds when I've like just completely retired and just walked away.
I tend to forget you exist until March, so we'll see if I can.
That's fair.
For sure, I'll check in. Well, cool. Well, hopefully this kind of brings back some good memories and has a more fun approach. But before we actually dive into this is all your ideas, Joe. So can you kind of take me back to round 1 in LA and kind of explain your rationale behind this idea?
Sure, yeah. Listening to the podcast and being a big fan of the podcast, I listened to all the previous episodes.
Oh.
Just thought this would be a great time to at least pitch this to you after round 1. And more so it came up because there was a different feeling come round 1. I think everyone can admit that, this year, round 1, at least in the West, there were a lot more teams than there were in the previous years. And so there was a little bit different spin to this year's Elite, mostly just because of the amount of teams and the amount of activity that we got in dodgeball. And, one of the things I noticed in round one was, I think some people sometimes take for granted what is currently available to the dodgeball community versus what and how it originally started. So that was really my main point, was to maybe get a podcast out, which I think this is a great time to really speak about this, being after the Nationals this year and after the most recent episode on your podcast. This is a perfect time to speak about this and just maybe see how far we've come as a dodgeball community since the early days and how we should appreciate what we actually have currently.
I agree. I know I did not mean to time it like this. It was just one of those things that, like, hey, we'll figure this out as we go. And then, we just had recap after recap after recap in some of the interviews. But yeah, you're right. This actually, the timing worked out perfectly, especially after the previous episode with Mark. And also kudos for listening to the entire thing. I mean, I dropped that thing like maybe 3-4 hours ago. So hopefully that helps.
I was going to say, how long did it take you to edit out all my F-bombs?
I think I was the worst, to be honest. I was like, Steve,
why are you beeping in that one?
Why are you talking like that?
We're noticeably above.
Let's see if we can make this one worse.
My big aha moment was apparently Lucas has a pretty big vocabulary as well, and I could not see that ever for coming out of Lucas's mouth. So
who knew?
Yeah. Okay. You know what? I'm sorry. I kind of fibbed a little bit there, Mark. Lucas doesn't cuss that much. It's just that we told him to watch the swear words in the Seattle Classic recap, and he must have dropped like a couple of A words here and there. It wasn't terrible. So I'm sorry to smear your good nature there, Lucas. But it was just more frustrating because every other word was like or. I'm like, no, I gotta bleep that out later. Dang it! But it was more funny than anything. So
well, we told you in the recap of the classic that people who swear tend to be more intelligent. So
That's right.
There have been studies out there
that is right. Yeah. So
here come the
there's
bleeps.
been studies done.
Yeah.
What about those who swear and drink?
Let's just do it
this
all.
podcast is on a roll.
Yep.
Yeah, we got like 5 PhDs here.
One official, but
one actual, right?
One official, one master's, 3
regular
TBD. I don't know.
Bachelor's.
I'm not really sure. That's as far as I went so far.
I attempted master's, and I was like, this is dumb. This is doing nothing for me. I already got what I needed. So, well, before we dive right in again, I just want to preface: this was originally going to be the WDA versus the WDBA episode, but shockingly enough, I don't know if I should preface with that, but I had a really long conversation with Alan Thomas right after WDA, and he kind of changed how I wanted to approach the whole thing. So what I wanted to do before that was actually just kind of talk about the good old days and kind of like, I don't want to say air out our grievances, but as you were saying, Joe, like just kind of reminiscing about the good. And Mark, what you were alluding to last episode was, also kind of touching on the bad, and then going from there to an actual okay, what is actually going on? In case anybody was wondering, because I try to update, my intention of the schedule, and I did not just toss this aside. But anyway, you guys have been saying that you've been playing dodgeball since 2005, 2006. Earlier in the thread, Serge, you said you can't really speak to the pre-NDL days. Is that true?
Yeah, that's right. I started in 2005 at a bar, and then my first competitive tournament was the first NDL in 2005. So I'm not too sure what happened before then.
Not much. So you came in, and when you entered the dodgeball scene, the NDL was already there.
No, actually. So when I entered the dodgeball scene, I started playing, like I said, in the country western bar.
Right.
And
you got to name it because it's the greatest thing ever. Because I was there at the same time, but you crossed paths.
Yeah, you were able to make it out to one of them.
I worked at Bennigan's down the street.
Yes.
In Mission Valley. Yeah. Down the street from In Cahoots, and I closed Sunday nights.
Oh, wonderful!
People that would finish or come back from that would come to our bar, and I would just hear about it, and I was just always just so insanely jealous of I need to take a Sunday night off to go play dodgeball at this
Were you playing dodgeball at that time, Mark?
That was a period where I wasn't. I was racing motocross almost exclusively.
Gotcha. For some reason, I remember you being part of the Extreme Dodgeball League, the TV show.
I wasn't. The people that are still kind of around from that era are David Benedetto, Eric Tillmans, Benny Toth. I haven't seen Gary Davis in a while. And then, there was Sebastian Ciotti and
Seabass.
There's another one that obviously Costanza.
Right.
So those were the guys that were the main ones that are still kind of, some are around and some are in the peripheral vision. Like they'll still show up to some open gyms around here. But those guys were back there in the Extreme Dodgeball days. So they had 3 seasons. The 3rd season they were given a celebrity. I'm sure Dave could give you an amazing recount of how that all ended. From the production side, I know that it ended because that production company was a fledgling small production company that had the show on Game Show Network. It was actually doing great ratings for a cable show. It was pulling in close to about 1 million people per episode, which is actually, for cable, is great. But what ended up happening was they got a TV show greenlit at Fox, which was going to make, when they were making cable money, they got network money, which is just tenfold. And so the show that they left Extreme Dodgeball for was, if you remember, it was called The Swan.
The Swan.
The Swan was where they took people that they deemed ugly and they gave them all the plastic surgery they wanted. And it was on Fox.
Isn't that like the story of our lives as dodgeball players? Like, we're always getting just pushed aside for something just incredibly ridiculous and inadequate, and it's just a slap in the face.
But it was one of those things where, like, Game Show Network was a very small, and it still is a very tiny cable network. And while it was doing good ratings, like, to go from a cable network to a major 5 network, like, the money is ridiculous. Like, they dropped it like a bad habit. And then there was also problems with the dodgeballers, and there was a lot of infighting in terms of players were told, for example, like Dave won one of the championships and won a ton, like they were supposed to win $10,000. No one got paid out. So there was a problem between players and producers.
That sounds oddly familiar.
That's how that kind of like all piled. It would be interesting for you to have Dave's perspective and Costanza's perspective, because that's going to be completely different sides. But I would say if you want to get information on that, it's pretty fascinating.
It'd be cool to go into the weeds like that. I'll definitely probably not even bother trying to edit anything though with either Dave or Costanza on. But
good luck.
That's funny. Yeah, there's some parallels there, though. Like, oh, you mean to tell me there was infighting in dodgeball? No way. Even back in 2004. Real quick, before the NDL, just to give you guys, from my perspective, what dodgeball looked like, it was just around. We just decided on a whim to play Medic, which was a version of dodgeball, I guess, back in the gym days. And we started in 2004. And then out of nowhere, the movie dropped in June of 2000. Yeah, same year, 2004, and there's just a huge surge of dodgeball leagues and interest everywhere. And how I found out about the NDL was through this website called dodgeballer.com. Do you guys remember that by any chance? It was a message board. It was a forum, like back in the days when forums were still a thing, right? Message boards. Do you remember that by any chance, Serge or Joe or Kelly?
No, I don't.
No.
Yeah, and from what I recollect back in the day, really Colin Gavernsky was the guy who kind of pipelined every type of dodgeball tournament that we would know about. Like, he was our guy who just told us about whatever dodgeball tournament was out there. And we really had no idea what that was, but we signed up for every tournament that was out there that was possible. back in the day in the early 2006 and 7 days.
Yeah.
Dodgeballer.com is owned by US Dodgeball, not to be confused with Team USA or USA Dodgeball. So it's the NDL people own that website.
Yeah, so big surprise. The number one forum, Dodgeballer, was again, it was a message board. So anything dodgeball related was posted on there. And you found this simply by Googling dodgeball. Back in the day, there was like nothing else that would have that kind of SEO ranking. So in early 2005, it was announced that the National Dodgeball League was going to have a $25,000 tournament hosted at Caesar's Palace. And I think we're just going to dive right into one of the topics right now with this. It just created all the hype. It looked very polished, very professional. And, I mean, I don't want to talk about it too much because I'm not really sure how into the weeds you want to go. But, Serge, you want to kind of get into the NDL a little bit? Or?
Yeah, well, can I actually backtrack a little bit and maybe say a few things about In Cahoots, because I think I would be doing it an injustice to not
to
echo what Mark said.
Sure, you should definitely talk about In Cahoots.
Yeah.
Let's not talk about the entire experience of In Cahoots, but we can talk about some things concerning In Cahoots. So In Cahoots was awesome. It was we started there before the NDL in 2005, and just imagine a dark environment, 2-story Coliseum-like environment when you're walking onto the court, the dance floor, that is surrounded by a net that they would put up every Sunday night. 225 you call it, and it was no holds bar. The court sizes were smaller than the Elite, and there was no blocking on top of that. So it was just total chaos and total brutality.
Did you guys use nice little hint there, nice pun?
No
Did you guys
pun
use,
intended, right?
Right?
Yeah. I gotta get a little plug in. Sorry.
There was blocking allowed.
Was it?
Women were allowed to block.
Oh, was that really the case?
Yeah. So women were allowed to block, which made them a kind of a special part of the team because it was co-ed.
Yeah.
You used them as human shields, didn't you, Serge?
No. Of course
I
not.
will say
I would know.
I was used as a human shield many a times, but it was the best way I ever learned how to block.
Yeah.
Because it was so close and you were blocking everything.
And to be completely honest, for my own experience, I first started out playing at In Cahoots. My very first dodgeball experience was at In Cahoots. And so, playing that for up to almost a year before I started playing NDL, when I went to NDL, it was so slow because your reaction time you literally had, tenths of a second at In Cahoots because the court was only a total of like maybe 30 feet long.
While under the influence.
A 15-foot center line where you couldn't see the balls because the colored lights up top were orange and purple and red, the same colors of the balls that we were also using at the time. So, it was quite the experience. And headshots, were they legal in Cahoots?
Yes.
Yeah.
No holds
they were.
barred.
Yeah.
Okay, perfect.
Well, and then on top of that, you were drinking top shelf liquor for $2.50.
Yeah, Don Julio and Coronas it was $5 with the tip. Every time you went to the bar.
You learned real quick how to get out of the way, block, or catch.
You know what was quite exceptional and wonderful, at least for me, Steve, was when I learned how to pinch from the guys up in Oceanside. I think that's where I met Justin and all of them. And I snuck it into In Cahoots. And mind you, these are courts that are smaller than Elite. The setting is dark. Everyone's under the influence. And I just bring pinch to the table and just start smacking people hard. People are coming up to me asking me if I'm on steroids and what had happened to me over the weekend. And that was wonderful. But once they found out what it was, they banded it.
They banded it. So pinch was brought to you by somebody from Oceanside? Possibly
so, yeah.
Justin.
And the great thing about...
Wasn't it Random Man?
Yeah, well, Random Man introduced it to Oceanside through Justin and then also Colin and Tommy and that whole group that had started earlier.
Tommy Viviano. I haven't heard that name in a long time.
That's an old name.
Quite the family man now.
He's in Texas.
Is
He is in Texas.
So what was great about In Cahoots, if an outsider ever came in, maybe they were just going for a cup of coffee at the Starbucks in the shopping center, at 8:00 at night, they pull into the parking lot and you see about 40 people or 50 people outside warming up to play dodgeball.
So cool.
With cut-off sleeve shirts and basketball shorts on, and we were had tape around our fingers and our wrists. And it was a serious thing. Even going into In Cahoots, it was still quite the competition because there was cash prizes at the end as well. And plus, it was, you wanted to let everyone know who was the best.
Yeah, and then you had people like Serge
still
Pinson.
there, yeah?
Yes. It just stopped doing dodgeball. Serge, do you want to explain that?
No,
It was probably Serge's fault.
We have to get into that. Next question.
Real quick
There
though,
was quite an unfortunate incident where it stopped. But in all honesty, it was a blessing in disguise, only because I think it really helped San Diego create a Sunday practice as well, and where we established some type of formal dodgeball in the early days, where we actually had a schedule where we go out into a park and play, but maybe we'll get into that a little bit later. But that was actually the formation of the first formal scheduled practice that San Diego ever had as a dodgeball community.
and why and how San Diego would actually show up to these tournaments in the NDL and start owning people, and how you guys ended up being so good. This was rubber, right, that you guys were using, by the way?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Crazy.
I remember I was actually invited by my friend Heidi, who I worked with. And she's like, oh, you have to come down in Cahoots. It's so fun. You can get cheap drinks, and you can just watch us play dodgeball. It's like, all right, cool. That sounds good. So I think I was playing indoor soccer at the time. I finished my game, and I went straight to in Cahoots. And I was watching it, and I was just like, this is ridiculous. Like, it's insane, but I'm here to watch. I'm here to drink. Like, let's have some fun. And it was actually Corey Morrison who came up to me at one point and was like, hey, we need a woman. Like, can you come play right now? It's like, So I literally, like, flipped off my flip-flops and, like, ran out onto the court. I had no idea what I was doing. I was super drunk. And I think that was actually probably the best experience, because I don't know if I would have done it if I hadn't been completely intoxicated, but
what happened?
It ended up being a lot of fun, and that's what ended up keeping us coming back every week and enjoying kind of the camaraderie around dodgeball and in Cahoots.
I think that's where Kelly got most of her nicknames from, was from In Cahoots in her early days. And I was probably a big proponent of nicknames.
That where Beavers came from?
Oh, no, this is prior to Beavers. He's going to get real interesting here.
Yeah, so two of Kelly's first initial nicknames from back in the day was Last Call. That was our first one.
Okay, I can hear that one.
Cheers.
Yeah. And I think it was, what is it, Clutch Mode? Clutch
Mode.
Because Kelly, so my very first experience of me and Kelly and Jim McMasters and Corey Morrison were all on the same team. We were called...
Did Jim have a full head of hair?
Oh, and it was, he had the bleach tips.
Bleach tip, full hair.
And
mats that connected from his eardrum to the shoulder.
Yeah.
And we had Big Gary.
Yeah, and he had really big muscles at the time, so he would come in with the cutoff shirt, and he had a big watermelon head, but that's besides the point. What was important is the name of the team was Rookie of the Year, and that was my first team that I was ever on, and it was me, Jim, Kelly, and Corey Morrison, and there was another
Gary.
And Big Gary. But Clutch Mode came from Kelly always being the last person in, and she always caught a ball and brought someone in so that we could win that week or whatever it was. But Kelly always came in clutch at the very end, and she still does it today, and that's where she got the name from. So I'll take credit for the nicknames that Kelly has.
You did give me those nicknames, and I'm also still Last Call.
Last Call was probably the most important one, because Last Call at 1:15 in San Diego, when we were still playing dodgeball during the championship series, we would all look at each other, and Kelly's like, let's do one more. And so we would get the Don Julio and the Coronas and cheers it up before we went out onto the dance floor to compete in the championship match.
That's amazing.
That's how you win championships.
Did Did Chase Findell or any of the AAA All-American Apostle guys play in this tournament? Like you mentioned, Colin Gavrinsky a while ago.
Chase came down.
Yeah.
He wasn't part of In Cahoots from the beginning, but eventually he worked his way down. And maybe, I guess to a certain extent, we kind of corrupted him there. He was somewhat of a goody-goody before being introduced to the dark world of In Cahoots. But he would come down and have a lot of fun, and he was one of the top players there as well, similarly to how he played on AAA.
It's probably taking shots of like wheatgrass, not really engaging in all the fun.
Oh no, he was he would engage in the full thing.
Oh, wow.
Libations.
Yeah.
Libations. Man.
Yeah, he came down. Colin and Tommy were always there, who kind of had a link with some of the guys up there. But a lot of them were young, so they couldn't get into the bar.
Right.
But In Cahoots did hold an annual dodgeball tournament. I think that's is that true, Serge? There was a sign up for that was different from the annual Sunday dodgeball. There was an In Cahoots type tournament where it did bring a lot of the people from northern San Diego, the Vista Oceanside area, down to In Cahoots just for that tournament, as well as some of the colleges here at San Diego State as well.
Yeah, I think in some of its later years, I think they started doing that.
Yeah, because we did it during the day, because before that, In Cahoots was always happening, starting at 6, 7 at night on a Sunday night. But when we would do the tournaments, they started earlier in the daytime. I remember we'd be out in the parking lot, warming up, getting stuff ready before we went in.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I wish we had something like that. The closest thing we had was Blade World, and you might remember, Serge, that indoor roller hockey rink.
I do.
Where they would serve alcoholic beverages during these tournaments that we would try to host, and used to drink and play at that time.
Make this come back. My wheels are already spinning.
Yeah, I can see that.
I'm going to partner with a bar here in Los Angeles
that would
make this happen.
That would up the rec scene so much. That would get so many new people playing.
I've been looking at sports bars in LA. Like, I'm making this happen. It's done.
You're Googling as we're having this conversation.
100%.
Like 2 weeks later,
I'm
hey
sorry,
guys, guess what?
I'm already like, I need this in my life.
Mark, I'm in.
I was gonna say
I'm gonna do it like right in the middle of UCLA and just wail on kids that are just legal enough to drink, but still legal enough to like maim,
get murdered,
naive enough to sign up for a dodgeball tournament at the same time.
I'm sure of those like 30 kids will probably recruit like 5 or 6 of them that will want more.
You'll be able to look back at this in like 3 months and be like, "Yep, it happened here."
This is what started it. I was gonna say we should have like a pilgrimage at In Cahoots one of these days. I need to go actually see it for myself and just embrace the memories.
I would love to call them and be like, "What's it gonna take to like do an event?"
It's the same.
I'm not sure if Serge is allowed to go.
No, I am. I'm actually really cool with Mike, the manager, that who was there originally, but he took off for a few years and now he's back. So I think he would be interested. Mark, you should.
I'll hit him up.
You might read.
I think it'd be great to bring it back to Mecca.
Please do it.
I mean, in all honesty, In Cahoots was probably my very first experience at In Cahoots. Hooked me on dodgeball my entire life. You know, and even at the age of 38 now, which I hate using those numbers, but I tell people even at my work, and it's a great icebreaker for work too, because I do a lot of training, so I'm in front of a lot of people, and my icebreaker is always about the game of dodgeball, and I tell people about this, and they just laugh and they completely open up after it. But I tell them I'm going to play till the wheels fall off, and it was all because of my very first experience at In Cahoots dodgeball.
I will say In Cahoots was probably some of the funnest I've been drinking. Most fun dodgeball played. Just because even when there were fights and there was over drinking and I was at the bar again by myself, it was just a fun time. Yeah. Like, you come back the next week and everybody was okay.
Yeah, you're buying drinks for the same people you're yelling at.
Yeah, exactly. Like, you're like, oh my gosh, you're an idiot, but here's shot of tequila. Okay, we got this. Let's go.
This might be too deep of a question right now, but I'm just going to go for it. And I'm trying to pull it up from the conversation that Mark and I had. And that was, you guys were saying like how fun this was, and like just that was like some of the, I guess for lack of better words, like the purest dodgeball, like some of the best memories. And I can pull from my experience in Tucson as well with Blade World, and some of the times we go up to Phoenix and play in their bar tournaments. And probably not going to ask this as eloquently as I'd like to, but the question is, do you think we've lost some of that with all the progress, development, and growth that we've had witnessed over the past 12 years, primarily the past 3?
I think I'm in a different situation than the rest of everybody on this.
Yeah.
Because, I started Elite because I was upset with the way things were run by not one organization, but by all of them. So, like, I'm in a situation where, like, I don't get to play without being at least part of running it. So, like, I haven't been able to, like, fully check out and be completely 100% in the game in years. So, I mean, I would love to find something where I get to do that. Kelly's tournament Kelly's tournaments allow me to do that. I think I've just been running into problems with, like,
timing,
work and wife and timing.
Life.
Well, yeah. Hopefully you'll come out this year.
I'm going to be very happy to burn down Tyler's tournament.
Burn down.
I get to be the for a change.
Oh.
I get to be the guy yelling at the refs and being completely belligerent and pointing and yelling too, and just getting to be a general and not have to be, like, compromising.
You know what though, Mark? That might actually be good, because other people get to watch you do what they do on a regular basis in every tournament and be like, you know what?
That's me.
Mark's in this tournament, but you know what? That's probably me every tournament. Maybe I should change. So that might be something eye-opening for the rest of the dodgeball community if they were able to watch it.
Oh, I can't wait to be able to just, like, talk trash all day. Like, when I started, everybody knew me as a trash talker. I would point, I would wag my finger, and that all had to go as soon as I started running something.
Oh, I had to grow up. Bummer.
Because
that doesn't have to go.
As soon as you have to be the face or a leader of an organization, like, you can't be that guy because no one will ever come back.
Yeah.
I mean, in a sense, but coming from a point where now I've been doing some tournaments, I don't know. Like, I've definitely yelled at a ref or two at the women's tournaments that I run.
Everybody's seen me go red in the face and scream and yell.
I think at some point it's just a matter of the game, and passion is high, competitiveness is high, and an understanding that the organizers are also players needs to be understood. So,
sorry to get off topic here, Damon, but I think that, yes, there's a little bit of fun lost than where we started, but remember, where we started was training wheels. In Cahoots was training wheels. WDS was training wheels. Everything that we're playing right now, everybody's got to take serious because people are training. We have teams hiring trainers to stretch them out. You, Serge. Which, by the way,
it must have worked.
Bravo.
Yeah.
I think that was one of the best moves I've seen all season and one of the most impressive things, because someone was taking it seriously. And what ended up happening was it was an extremely hot tournament, and you had someone telling you, make sure you hydrate and stretch out all weekend, because I guarantee you that without that guy, you probably would have lost 2 of your people to cramps.
Oh, yeah. I'll give Chris Bell the credit. He was the one who proposed the idea in a group text, and initially we were all not very excited about it, but it ended up working out really well.
Stretched out, Serge?
What's that?
You didn't want to be stretched out?
Initially, no. I wasn't too thrilled about the idea, but once having him there, it was actually it was great. It was great.
I was rather shocked you didn't have him at round 3 and nationals.
Well,
I thought it was strange that it was just a round 2 thing.
No, we tried our best to get him to both of the rounds. More importantly, nationals, because it's a 3-day tournament. But I think he had a wedding that weekend, or there was some scheduling issue, so it's a real big.
But you wouldn't hire someone local?
We should have.
That's an easy Craigslist thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you trust Craigslist with people touching you.
Yeah, but you can find great personal trainers on Craigslist because they're always hungry for work.
Is this just like a professional stretcher, though? Like, what exactly was this person doing for you?
Well, from my perspective, he was running them through warm-ups and stretches and little circle
drills. He had a bunch of
drills.
contraptions and stuff that he used on our arms, on our legs.
Wow.
He was doing the stretching before the tournament and keeping us loose during the tournament.
I'm not going to lie. In round 2, I was a beneficiary of that because I was kind of lingering around the Rise team and listening to what the trainer was saying, and I was just duplicating whatever he was doing from afar. So I did definitely get a benefit from that, and I think that really helped me out because that was probably the most enduring tournament as far as being able to compete at a high level with the conditions that we were presented with.
So you're totally the girls from Bridesmaids, hiding behind the tree, stealing the workout for free.
I see an opportunity, and I took full advantage of it. That's what I did.
More power to you, Joe.
That's amazing.
Crashers.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, so you raise a good point. We talk about the good old days, but I think we're also kind of glossing over some of the aspects of it.
Yeah, no one brings up okay, in those days, it was quote unquote pure, but with pure comes like Serge was saying, it wasn't cheating, but it's edging of the rules. So he comes in with pinching and everybody's blown away here. And if you go back to those tournaments, if you go to and there's still these tournaments around here where some new organization will be oh, dodgeball should be a cool thing, and they'll show up and I think I did it 2 years ago. There was something in Orange County and they decided to do a dodgeball tournament, and we showed up and we were I don't see a rule against pinching. Yeah. There's going to be the cheaters, the hotheads. There's going to be an enormous gray area of rules, so that if you're one of those people like myself where you want to play the game within the rules to be both the best sportsman you can and the best athlete you can, but you're playing against people who that's been thrown out the window. Whereas when we play Elite right now, everybody's trying to play within that box of the rules and their ability. And so you've got structure. A little bit of the fun is lost with structure. That's always the case. But I think I would prefer the structure and not be wanting to knock someone's teeth in.
So I was talking in the podcast episode I had with Glenn, it was just before round 1, and I was driving to LA, re-listening to it, just thinking how I can probably ask questions better and whatnot. And just it dawned on me that I was going to LA straight shot by myself for a tournament that was guaranteed to be very structured, very well done, just very awesome. And it reminded me of the good old days where there would be a tournament popping up, but you'd have no idea if it was even going to happen. We don't know if there's going to be teams that are going to show up. You don't know what kind of teams it will be. You don't know if they're just going to be a bunch of douchebag, broed out dudes that are going to get murdered the second we start playing in a cohesive manner. And I forgot what that was like to just go somewhere but not be guaranteed that at the actual event was going to happen, because there have been so many that have been canceled on us the day of. We're well, this sucks. Have you guys ever experienced anything like that in the past?
Of course.
How about you, Serge?
Yeah, no.
You've been quiet.
Sorry, Steve. Can you repeat the question?
No, I'm gonna move on to Kelly now.
Okay, go
Can you
for
use
it.
it in a sentence?
Yeah. What's the origin?
The origin is: have you ever had a tournament cancel on you? Like you round up your guys, you're excited to go play. This is before the Elite days, right? Before NDL, and it just like is a disaster or a show, or just doesn't even happen.
I mean, I knew of some that were like not great. They definitely weren't great. We went to one that we didn't know. So this was back in the day when we would just get told where tournaments were, and so you show up and you do your thing.
But
Hope
it's
for the best.
2007. We'll go back to 2007.
Yeah, we're
Okay, so
20.
that's where we are now.
22, 23. And of course we showed up with a cooler of beer and everything that we can think of. And, you know, no one told us we were showing up to an AA tournament.
Oh my god.
Out in the middle, and this was a 2-hour drive, and this is what we're talking about. We always found out about tournaments 3 or 4 days before they were actually happening. So,
And of course we said yes.
yeah, because we
Of
just
course.
wanted to play dodgeball, and that
Yeah.
was the thing.
Because back in the day, you didn't have that many tournaments. So it was like, oh, there's a tournament? Absolutely. We'll drive out there. That sounds awesome. Let's do it. We show up with our coolers to an AA tournament,
Oh boy.
which obviously disrespectful, like not what we want to do, not what we want to be about, but nobody said anything to us because they just said, hey, it's dodgeball. And, you know, we come from where we go to a bar and we play and we drink.
And I was wearing Jägermeister wristbands, and I had an 18-pack.
Wait,
walking
you
in.
still wear Jägermeister wristbands?
I do not. I wear only number 56 now on my wrist or on my forearms, and it's not a one-size-fits-all. That is bogus from Nike because I stretch out those forearm wristbands. By the
That
way,
was probably one of the more embarrassing moments of my life, going to that.
It actually was. Like, I remember showing up and thinking, we absolutely should not be here because it was a charity tournament, which is fine. And I'm fine giving my money for that, but that was not what we had shown up to be.
And I think that kind of speaks to the lack of structure that Mark was talking about. In the
Yeah.
games.
Well,
there
not only
wasn't like a set line of communication. There wasn't like information properly circulated for us to know exactly what a particular tournament entailed. And so, yeah, that was really embarrassing.
Yeah, you know, you talk about almost the most simplest complex of dodgeball. You talk about just the balls itself, right? I mean, we were playing with SpongeBob SquarePants, Halloween balls in a tournament.
It's whatever they can get at Target,
There were
probably.
different textures, and
But to be fair, the texture of those balls are some of the best.
because the rubber is so thin that you can grip the hell out of one, and just an average thrower can be a phenomenal thrower if you can get the right grip on some of those. But just the inconsistency in the balls. And now, I mean, Mark, you can attest to this. I mean, what do you do when you buy all these new balls? I mean, there's
a
more that goes
process.
into it than just bringing them to the tournament.
We could do a whole podcast on balls. Like, I'm particular about.
There's very specific balls.
Well, yeah, like just the PG alone, there's a Vietnam, a Cambodia, a Chinese, and a Hong Kong version. And I particularly like the Chinese and Taiwan, actually.
It's incredible.
So I make sure I get from vendors that get those.
Like those no sting balls. During UDC, we had to wash them in a tub with soap just to get some of the grease off of them. And so I know some people put them in a washer just to get some of that initial gloss or whatever it is that makes it so.
Yeah, and I'm the only one that does that, and it drives me insane. And I'm not gonna throw Jake under the bus here, but I am.
But
Yeah, you just said his name.
It's gonna be one of those things where, like, I'm sure I'm gonna have a talk with him, but like everybody notices that the 8.5s at Sin City are different than what we have at, say, an Elite round. Yes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because
Sure.
they're not broken in. They're not washed, they're not stretched, they're not crushed, and not reinflated.
I mean,
well, they're also, and like you said before, it's also dependent on where you get them from.
Yes, but
I remember when I played first.
So every ball comes in. They're covered with like an oil or silicone, so that way, if you'll notice if you ever leave an 8.5 ball out in the sun, it will harden. It will change color. It will harden. It will become worthless. Like any other kind of rubber like that. Like if you leave your knee pads or a pair of socks in the sun, you dry them that way, the sun breaks down that latex, that rubber, or whatever. That's why, if you're one of those people that wears like compression shorts or a compression shirt and you dry it in the sun and after a month it's all blown out, it's the sun. So when people, that ball comes in, you've got to wash that off. And then you've got to stretch it out to expose the rubber underneath. And then you've got to crush, deflate it, and then reinflate it. And that's something that not a lot of people do. And going back to I don't know how you want to call it, non-sanctioned tournaments. Like I said, there's still tournaments around here you can find, and you show up, and that 8.5 has been inflated to 9 inches. It's rock hard.
It's a watermelon.
You can't grip the ball. It's a mess.
Well, and the reason I bring that up is just because we're trying to define how far we've come since the early days and to what now, right? And I just remember from the early days, it was whatever ball you could find. If someone brought a ball from the Rite Aid, they paid $8.99 for, and it was like plastic, not really rubber. We used it in a dodgeball tournament. Whereas now there's a official structure to how you go about and just preparing the balls for a tournament that people I don't think recognize that going into every single tournament. They just take it for granted that that's the way the ball should be and that's the way they come straight out of the box. Well, and that was really my point.
Well, yes, I agree with that. And I think that there's like Mark said earlier, certain vendors are going to give you certain quality of balls. And when I did my first tournament, I reached out to Mark and I said, hey, where do you get your balls from? No pun intended. And, because it does matter. You don't just want to go to Walmart and pick up a set of balls and they're going to suck. So you want to find the best quality that you can. But on top of that, everyone's going to have their own opinion. Some people like really overinflated balls. Some people like really squishy balls. Every person has their own opinion on the balls themselves. And especially with no sting, I think there is a variety of opinion on those as well. So some people like to squeeze them a little bit more. So they like them to be a little bit squishier, a little bit more worn in, a little bit used. Where I like the new balls because they're more like 8.5 balls to me. They're more hard, they're firm. Those are the balls I tend to try to pick up and use because the squishy ones just end up not working out for me. But every player is going to have a little bit of a difference in what they like. So it's really hard in that sense as organizers to figure out what balls to use necessarily because some people will complain about one thing even though other people are saying they're the perfect ball.
Right.
So one thing I want to touch on, which I might be the only person that knows this, and I'd be surprised if somebody else does. So the balls for Elite, the 8.5 or a no sting ball, when inflated correctly, it is just about 1 pound per square inch. The instructions on it are 1.5, but 1.5 is rock hard. And when we get people who say like, oh, it's overinflated, underinflated, like, oh, why isn't there a standard? I implore you to try and find a pressure gauge that can do something within 0 to 1 pounds. Because if you use the same pressure gauge that you use for your car, that's trying to measure something between 25 psi and 35 to 45 psi, depending if you drive a Prius or a truck. So when you're talking about something within, you know, 0.6 of a pound to 1.1 of a pound, it's impossible to measure with the tools we have available. So that's why it's all done by like feel, if you will. And so like what we always try and do for an elite tournament is have like one person be able to do the inflation of the balls so that like at least it's consistent to one person. Because if you have like 10 people inflating balls,
it's gonna vary.
You have 10 different opinions on what perfection is.
Makes sense. And I don't mean this as like a sideways comment by any means, but like we just spent maybe 8-9 minutes talking about ball consistency, structure, and all this other stuff, which is
well, because we're the OGs. Like,
yeah, because with
the ball, we're really particular because we know what like a product looks like and a good product looks like.
Yeah. So let's
and it makes all the difference.
There's 12 years of experience of touching these dodgeballs consistently for a long time. You get quite the palate.
I mean, I can tell you blindfolded the difference between Vietnamese balls.
We have to. I'm going to call you on that. We have to figure out next time we meet if we'll have to do that blind test.
There really is a difference, though.
Yeah.
And that's what's crazy about it. And it's true. Like at some point, you just have one person who's blowing them up, who says, "This is the standard that I'm using for this time," you know, and that's what it's going to be. Unfortunately, I think we've all been to tournaments where the balls, you get one that looks like a bowling ball and one that looks like a stinger, and then somewhere in between that, and you just kind of learn to deal with it. And that's been throughout the years. That's been pretty consistent. And I don't see that changing because of that issue of trying to figure out the correct PSI and how can we get that perfect and blah, 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 blah. But
there's even slight inconsistencies in 8.5 balls. I mean, you could have ordered 100 from the same company, from the same, country, but the inconsistency maybe in the rubber itself. I mean, I grab a ball, I'm like, hey, catch them. You're going to, let's switch balls because you're going to throw, and this ball, you could throw 100 miles an hour versus the one you probably have that feels like you probably only throw at 70. You know, and it's really just there's even inconsistencies in 8.5. So I think it's across the board. There's still a little bit of inconsistency, and maybe with some of the older folks who've been playing for a while, you can there's the subtle differences are more apparent than maybe some of the younger folks.
Well, yeah, I think for those of us who've been playing since like you had like the Mikasa balls that you just picked up at Walmart or whatever, like those balls were thick, they were hard, they had no give, you had no grip. So
it was more plastic than rubber. Almost.
They're also like $8 because they have the word dodgeball on them.
I will say this though. The new Mikasa official dodgeball, it's not a story I can really say here without getting in trouble. But the new Mikasa dodgeballs, if you get the new ones, they're actually fantastic.
That's good.
So more to come on that, Mark?
I don't think I'll ever be able to to say that on a public forum of how. But I take credit for it.
I'm sure somebody will dig it up. You guys said
we're on Google now.
Exactly.
You won't
Google.
figure it out.
Challenge accepted. You guys said a word about care or attentiveness, or I forgot what the word was already, but it was basically we somehow went to this point from these organizations or clubs or bars that are holding these like tournaments where like, hey, we're just gonna go to like the Walmart, buy like 6 balls and we're fine, and they're gonna play, and we'll have like 5 rules, and then we'll quote the movie, and that's it. Enter the National Dodgeball League, an organization that would say does care, at least at the time, about structure, about branding, about bringing a level of competitiveness that I don't think any of us could say existed prior to that. I did want to kind of talk about that a little bit, just how much that changed going from competing at Cahoots or Blade World to, going to these Vegas DWCs. I guess I don't know what kind of question I want to ask about this. maybe we'll just ask what the first one was. Serge, start with you. What was your first DWC?
My first DWC was in 2005, which was the first one.
The very first one.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, that was the one that was held in Henderson.
Yep.
And
That concrete floor?
No, that was
Home
year
courts.
2. That was 2006. But it was, I mean, I can answer the question just by talking about how different it was from the experience at a place like In Cahoots. Going to the DWC was an extraordinary experience, because what had happened at In Cahoots was that we started to naturally develop the best players and the best teams, and we started forming teams with those people. And we were hungry for something more competitive. And so when we heard about the first DWC, which was the national championship of the NDL, it was through a flyer that was posted in the bar. We went and we just didn't really know what to expect. And it was the first real time that we got to experience the level of structure, the level of seriousness and competition that was far beyond what we had experienced at In Cahoots, and it was on a national level. So it was really cool seeing so many dodgeballers from all over the country. There were players from Alaska, from Hawaii, from the East Coast, all over the place. And that was, for me at least, the big difference, is that, okay, here's a platform, a dodgeball platform that is much more serious, much more competitive, and national in scope. And I would say that is the big contribution that the NDL made when it held its first national tournament, and then continued to do so throughout the years.
Do you remember what team won?
I think it was the team that was sponsored by a bank.
Home loans.
They were
Was it Alaska?
No, Alaska won in 2007. They beat us, and we got second place. That was the first year Rise went, and Alaska won in 2007. 2006 was AAA. 2005, it was the bank-sponsored team, and they wore maroon jerseys, Steve.
Based out of Utah.
But I'll tell you, a really fond memory that I have of that tournament was the crowd gathering, largely celebrated match between Team Evil and AAA. I don't know if you remember that one, Steve.
I do.
But it was pretty cool, because the AAA guys were like all goody guys, and they had these super nice looking uniforms, like white jerseys, sky blue shirts and stuff. And here comes Team Evil with Steve, and they're just wearing all black.
And we had the devil on our chest, and
yeah, so it looked like a heavenly war. It was a holy battle. It was pretty cool. It was a match that everyone was waiting for the entire time, and I don't remember who won that match. I want to say it was AAA. Good ended up winning on that one. Is that?
Yeah. So also one thing you forgot about this team AAA was they had a giant cross on their left chest, and so it was literally good versus evil. And I remember I approached who I think was now not Colin Gavrinsky, but the other short guy. He had the handlebar mustache. I approached him, me, Logan, and Mason. Yeah. And just to set the tone, I had some really funky hair at the time, and I also weighed 120 pounds, and I was also wearing Adidas pants, which is hysterical to think about now. But so the three of us guys, all in black, embracing Satan, walk up to this kid who's stretching, and he looks at us like we're about to jump him. And we're like, hey, we noticed that you guys are an all-Christian team. I don't know if we're going to get to face off against you guys in the actual tournament, but would you be down for a quote-unquote fun grudge match afterwards? And he's like, let me talk to my captain. And then a couple of rounds pass by, and here comes Chase Findell, and he's like, hey guys, dodgeball's great, I'm really friendly, let's do this. What's that?
With the biggest smile.
Yeah, the biggest warmest smile ever. And just wow, this guy's he's not bad. Okay, we're gonna have a fun grudge match. And so sure enough, the tournament plays out. We secure some place in the furthest corner of home courts, and we play, and good prevailed. We lost, but I will say Logan, our captain at the time, knocked Chase out, and there's footage of this out there still.
Oh, wonderful.
Yep.
So the guy with the handlebar mustache that I think you're talking about is Alex Galloway.
Yes, Galloway. That's him. I knew another Galloway.
The beauty of Facebook.
He's another real family man now. He's got a couple kids and he's married, so he's departed from dodgeball, but he was quite the legend.
He played for a while.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He was quite the proponent of dodgeball for the first couple of years that I was involved in.
But I think, just to go back to that tournament, Steve, I mean, if I remember correctly, there must have been like at least 25 to 30 teams at that championship.
There was a lot. So it was, $25,000 asterisks pending 64 teams show up, and I think there was like maybe 40. Okay. It was the most teams I've ever seen, let alone the most polished teams that attempted uniforms and came from other states. And like one thing that the NDL did that was really cool was that through all these months, as we built up to the DWC, they would announce teams that were going. So like meet, I can't remember, like New Jersey, the Shockers or whatever, and here's their bios, and here's where they're from, and this is what they expect to bring to the table. And it was really cool because you got to know before Facebook, before MySpace, even dating myself, but like you got to understand the enemy a little bit. Was it 2005?
Yes.
Yeah, it was.
Stop that.
Okay, well, excuse me.
But that was when they were doing kind of like qualifiers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious why they stopped that.
They weren't doing qualifiers before that though. Like they didn't start the tour stops and all the other crap until 2006. Just saying.
Right.
I remember going to New Jersey and playing in the Mercer Madness like tournament when it was huge. We played with Eldar and it was a lot of fun, honestly. But yeah, those were part of the
That's a
leader.
name I haven't heard in a while either.
Mercer, that was like 2007, I think, right?
You know, I'm old, so those dates
It's all blur.
they all mix.
You're in your early 30s, Kelly.
I'm in my early 30s, which is a lot older than most of the players nowadays. So all those dates mix together.
Wait, so who's the oldest here on this podcast? Am I the oldest at 38? You don't have to say your age.
I
but
think
am
you
the
are, Joe.
oldest?
I'm 33.
Yeah, Joe, you're the oldest.
Yay!
I think we'll just have to crack Serge open and count his rings.
So am I the youngest on this podcast?
I think you are.
At 32?
Yep, you're the baby.
Wow.
You know,
I
I
Got
just
your whole life ahead of you, Kelly.
if I had one.
No, but you still look great for a 42. Don't let anyone tell you different.
She almost spews wine everywhere.
She does have a full head of hair, though, Serge.
Ooh.
There's a lot of hair here.
Go on
If
there.
I had one regret in life, it was I didn't find dodgeball early enough, or that the fact that it wasn't available at an earlier age for me. And so I guess, you know, in hindsight, it might be a regret, but it's also a reward in the same fact that I appreciate it that much more because there are people out there today who are 15, 16, who are just attached to the internet, who get to watch dodgeball on YouTube and say, you know what, I want to do this someday. And they get to start at such an early age where I got to start at 26, 27 years old. And now I'm 38 and I'm not going to be able to play for much longer. Like I said, I'll play till the wheels fall off, literally till the wheels fall off. But these guys get to experience dodgeball for 20 more years. You know, some of these guys like Mike McGee, who is 18 or 19. I'm not really sure what age he is, but
He's 19.
he started dodgeball years ago. And I just am jealous at the fact that he gets to start at such a young age where I wasn't available, and at the caliber and level of where dodgeball is now, from where it was in 2005, 2006, where we started really competitive dodgeball, like true competitive dodgeball. So that's where I come from, and that's where, you know, like I said, it's a catch-22 where I regret not starting earlier, but I appreciate where it's come today for the younger generation.
Yeah,
But
and
I would
that's
say, Joe, at the same time, like, just imagine, like, you're part of Generation 1, and Generation 1 gets inducted to the Hall of Fame first. Like you don't get to get inducted to the Hall of Fame in your early 20s.
That is true. That is true. But I still have Dave Benedetto, who is in his 40s and still
He's 45.
Yes, and so I tell him everything.
He's 44, turns 45 in like a couple months.
Go ahead.
Can I tell you a fun story about Dave?
Please.
So one of my favorite things is the very first NDL I ever went to. Of course, my family came out because they were used to coming out and supporting me in other sports
Oh, no.
that I played in. And they saw Dave, and he at this time had rolled his ankle. And it was the
his
size...
ankle and not his calf?
No. It was his ankle, and it was the size of like a softball,
It was
honestly.
massive.
And my sister looked at him, and then she looked at me, and she goes, "You need to stay away from that person. I'm not sure he's stable." And I just started laughing hysterically. It's like, in my head, I'm thinking, none of these people are really stable, but
this
sure.
one especially.
Like, yeah. And Dave is still playing, which is awesome. You know, like, to be able to see these players that I remember when I was 21, 22, first starting, still playing now, that's great.
Yeah, and you know, to add on to that, I was first introduced to Dave as Crazy Dave. That was his nickname in 2005 and 6.
Was it Crazy Dave or Super Dave?
Meant, or you know,
it was Crazy Dave, not Super Dave.
It was
Crazy Dave.
Crazy
Okay.
Dave.
Crazy
was first.
Dave.
Crazy
And it
Dave.
wasn't Animal.
I remember
Nope.
Animal.
Crazy Dave.
Animal was on the back of his jersey, but Crazy Dave is the way I was introduced
Yeah.
to Dave. And you know, over the years, I've been able to. And the great thing about some of these after parties is you have the time to be able to speak to some of these older guys. And you know, it went from Crazy Dave to introducing Dave to my girlfriend as "This is Dave Benedetto," and you know, he's a good guy. He has a great heart, and you know, he's part of the history of dodgeball. At the end of the day, I mean,
Yeah.
I would argue Dave belongs on the Mount Rushmore of dodgeball.
yeah, I mean, it's an honor to do
I
that.
really do. I think he's gonna outlast us all.
He probably will.
Yeah.
I mean, alcohol ferments you and like preserves you, right?
Oh, Dave is preserved by Arizona iced tea and
Actually,
And rum.
so Arizona.
sorry, Arizona iced tea and Malibu.
Yeah.
Malibu, if you're listening,
Love Malibu.
you need to sponsor Dave Benedetto.
Absolutely.
Oh man, so this is a perfect opportunity to go from the NDL when it introduced competitive dodgeball, had a standard, got you guys traveling to Vegas, got us traveling to Vegas. We all met each other. Why in the heck did you guys start coming down to Arizona?
In all honesty, it was a thirst for dodgeball. I mean, I
Yeah.
think San Diego was so desperate for any type of dodgeball experience, and I think Serge can attest to this too, as well as Kelly, because I think we all traveled together at some point. That our first experience out there at the Grand Canyon State Games was the first competitive dodgeball tournament that we played in that was organized in some type of professional way. Whether it was, and I forget his Carrington.
Michael Carrington.
Michael Carrington.
Michael Carrington, again, another name.
I love Mike.
Mike
Was awesome.
Yeah, and we actually stayed at the same hotel as him and his family one time, and we got to experience some time with him after dodgeball at the pool. He's like, I didn't realize how close you guys are in San Diego because you're so competitive on the
On dance floor.
Yeah, he's on a dance floor in cahoots. But on the dodgeball court itself, because you know, we were very competitive. You know, playing on Rise. You know, we were very serious about dodgeball. We just wanted to play, and it was the ultimate competition. But we went to Grand Canyon State Games, and it was such a great experience that we're like, you know what, this is our alternative to NDL at the time, because it was great competition. And at the time, you know, to be honest, Arizona probably had some of the most competitive teams available in the early days, and you know, in 2006 through 2010.
I would say
during those times.
I would go on and say that Arizona was probably the mecca of 8.5 during that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I wouldn't call them the mecca, but they were certainly the most competitive area. Because my situation was a little different. Because when we were coming up in LA, everything was rec. We still had Bronson, which was 8.5 pinch, and we had no sting. And when we started traveling, it was, like I wanted something more than rec, because it was fun, but it just didn't itch that competitive scratch. And Vince, Ish, and I were like, we want something more, so we got a 12-person van, and we got a bunch of people, and we went to Arizona, and we got bamboozled by Sam Pewitt.
Uh-oh. That's a name we don't say out loud here.
Yeah, but so we got told, okay, you need to come out to this tournament.
Oh man.
We go there. It's at what do you guys call the basketball arena there?
Kiwanis?
No. I'm talking about where the Phoenix Suns play.
Talking
ASU.
stick.
No, they don't play at ASU.
No, the Phoenix Suns arena.
I have no idea. I don't follow basketball. Talking stick, maybe? Talking stick.
Okay. Well, whatever it is, wherever the Phoenix Suns play, the tournament was there in their practice court, and it was what we called ourselves the LA Dodgers at the time. Vince had never played 8.5. It was basically just me and Ish who had played 8.5. Vince couldn't throw. He was throwing lobs, and then they told me, oh, you're not allowed to pinch. So basically we lost all of our arms, and we took second to Monsoon.
Ooh.
Yeah, Monsoon, which at the time was like Travis Courtney, Eric Nolan, Calangela. And that night we go out to party, and for one thing, we got to party with what's the name of the old rocker? Feed My Frankenstein, Alice Cooper. We got to party with Alice Cooper that night, but then we ran into Phoenix dodgeball players, and they were like, "Oh, you should have played at our tournament. That's where it's really at." And then from then on, we started going to those tournaments.
What year was this, Mark?
Let me say, just to give everyone a sense of like a timeline, the NDL started in 2005, and then the Grand Canyon State Games, which they would have 2 per year, a summer Grand Canyon State Games and also a winter Grand Canyon State Games. Didn't start, if I'm not mistaken, I'm looking at this old tournament history, Joe,
you're welcome.
That you put together for us. Nice. If I'm not mistaken, I think Grand Canyon State Games started in 2008.
5.
And it continued until 2000. I'm sorry, Steve.
2005.
Oh yeah. Wow. Okay, so there were 3 good years.
Yeah, it started earlier.
3 good years before we started going to it.
Yeah, but with Rise, we didn't actually hear about it until later on.
No, but I did. You guys went a year before that, because I remember hearing the story about Jim, who was shagging for a team, slipped on water and slid through a doorway. And that was before I was ever there.
Huh.
So maybe
that had to have been 2005, 2006.
So
maybe you didn't put it in the tournament history, Joe, because there was no placing on our end. But I'll tell you this: the way we kind of viewed it,
it may not have been Rise, but you were there.
It was comparable to a current NDL tour, it was comparable to a current elite regional, right? So you have the elite national championships at the end of the year. Grand Canyon State Games, at least for us in the West Coast, it was the most competitive venue that we could do, the most competitive tournament where we can play, except for the NDL, right? So that was sort of the big grand finale. We would go to the Grand Canyon State Games in the meantime to continue this thirst, as Joe put it, for competition.
So let me go ahead and give you guys some quick history on how we connected with San Diego. So in 2006, we had the Desert Madness NDL sanctioned tour stop, which we were able to provide 4 teams of strictly from Tucson, one team from Phoenix, which is where I met Michael Carrington. And then here comes the precursor to Rise of Brutality, which is 619, which was you, Serge, I believe. I want to say Chase, Little J, and I think Jim. I don't think Tim was there.
Yeah, McMasters was there.
Yeah, McMasters was definitely there because we were like, oh, it's that big dude from San Diego. That guy's a monster.
He had his blonde tips in that 619 as well. I want you to mention. I have a picture to prove it, too.
I've got video of this whole thing. Of us playing against each other, and we called it the good versus evil because we thought, oh, this is basically all American Apostles coming down to play with us. We didn't know that there was like a separation between the teams, and so that was summer of 2006. Later on, we had the 2006 Winter Grand Canyon State Games, which is like I think it was like 5 teams. It was pretty lame, and then in 2007. Take that back. Let me walk that back. So we had it was 2006 summer Grand Canyon State Games, but there was like a 5-6 team turnout. That winter in 2007, it was 4 teams, which we took. And then between myself, Michael Carrington, reaching out to Ed Prentice saying, you should come over and help assist this Grand Canyon State Games and turn into a bigger thing. They did that with the inclusion of a tour stop type of qualifier. So like if you won, you got a free ticket to the DWC, and that's when you guys started coming full force. And I think, Serge, you're kind of like the harbingers of like California invading us. Like I feel like that's where it started. So by the time the summer of 2008 rolled around, it was like LA showing up. But you guys are basically just showing up and I don't want to say stealing our thunder, but you made us really work for that competition. Do you remember that? Does that kind of check out in your history books?
Before you start, you may want to include the 7-page email that was sent around Arizona regarding how you play Rise in all of the tournaments out there.
Say again?
Who, me?
Do you remember the 7-page email that?
That did happen.
Yeah.
Who sent out an email?
They were scouting us.
They scouted us. There was a 7-page email that went out about how to beat Rise in the Grand Canyon State Games.
Who put that together? Is that Bill Fair?
No, it was. We called them. His name is Ryan. It was
Ryan Anderson.
Ryan Anderson.
Ryan Anderson and that whole crew.
But I think it was even other people.
Yeah, there was a 7-page email that went out, and we got a hold of it, and we read it, and it was quite interesting.
Who gave that to you? Who's the traitor?
I was amused.
Yeah. You can exclude that, but I know you want. Please elaborate on your experience.
I don't remember that email. I want to know who the traitor is. I think it was Jackie, because I think she and Kelly were friends at that point.
Oh, I miss Jackie.
I missed you guys throwing her into the pool as I was talking with Payan. That was hysterical, and I would kill to see that again real time.
I would just kill to see Jackie at a tournament.
Reach out to her. I think she still has it.
What stopped her from playing dodgeball?
Well, Tucson kind of crumbled. The competitive scene for Tucson kind of just dissipated. And I think that kind of made it more motivating for her to keep playing. But I still think she's got a couple good years in her. She was
absolutely
a freaking monster. And you want to talk about like the OGs? Like for us, she set the tone for what a competitive female player could be like, because she was
absolutely.
I have a good story about her. The first time we came to Arizona, the second time we came for a random draw tournament, and it was the time I remember her just absolutely crushing Ish all day.
She had a rivalry with him.
Well, I think that it gets forgotten how far back all of us go as far as like women in dodgeball. And so, I've known Jackie for so long. It's kind of crazy. But the very first all-women's team that we played with at NDL was in Opens. There wasn't a women's division at the time. There was supposed to be, and then there wasn't enough teams, aka there wasn't even 2 teams. So we ended up playing Opens, and we played Dirty Girls Dodgeball. Mm-hmm. And it was Jackie and I as the co-captains, and Jen, who doesn't play anymore either. And so, it goes pretty far back, but Jackie is definitely one of the OGs of dodgeball.
You have the Dodge Dolls as well.
Yeah, Dodge Dolls.
Was Jen the one that was always had like a broken ankle?
Yeah, I think so.
No,
she was.
She was on Janitors when it first started. It was me and Jen, and then Tommy, Colin, Jim, and Tim.
So not to be gender specific, but she was a very tall girl, and she played softball for several years. So she had a great arm.
Great arm.
And so one of the reasons why Tim and Jim and Colin all picked, because I don't know if you know this, a lot of people do. Any co-ed team, the big difference between one co-ed team versus another is how great the girls are, and it's a huge difference. And that was a huge difference for Janitors at the time when you had Kelly and you had Jen playing on the same team.
Yeah, so that was the very first, Dirty Girls Dodgeball was the very first women's team out of Southern California that played in open in NBL.
You remember what year that was, Kelly?
2008.
2007 or 8, yeah.
7 and 8.
I want to say 8 because 2007, all Ed did was like just put all the women together into like this kind of
so I think that's
division.
the year I played with. They pulled all the women together and they just did kind of random teams.
Like, go have fun.
Our team ended up winning. I played with I played with Tim Tim.
I missed Tim.
Yeah, exactly.
She was spectacular.
Tim is her sister. And so I played with Tim Tim, and I played with a few other players, including Laura, who played with AGP. And we won that season for the women's. And then the next season we came back with Dirty Girls Dodgeball, and there wasn't a women's because there wasn't enough teams. So we ended up just playing open. And that was the first time I played with Jackie, although I had known her for a full year by that point. And that was kind of like one of the first all women's teams in dodgeball. There was another women's team out of Oregon. And unfortunately, I don't know all their names anymore, but they also had a team that had kind of gone into some of the open play as well.
I think they're the Dodge Bells.
Yeah.
If memory serves
and
me
then
correctly.
after that, Beavers played in open, Ballbusters played in open, and Dodge Balls? No, what was it?
Dodge Dolls.
Dodge Dolls.
Dodge Dolls.
Yeah.
The easy.
The pink and white.
So there was a lot of women's teams that actually played in open before there was even women's.
When was the Ballbusters?
Yeah.
Ballbusters was 2010.
was like 2010.
2010.
Yeah, which kind of collided with the same time as Beavers. So Ballbusters and Beavers were started around the same time, and
because I remember Ballbusters beating teams in open in Grand Canyon State games, and that was a big thing.
Absolutely,
They took 5th, I think, 5th or 4th.
So
Ballbusters was an amazing team, amazing 8.5 team.
And before we get too much, off topic, I want to have a shout out to Michael Carrington, because he literally pushed the Grand Canyon State Games for a long period of time before I think he had to stop because his daughters were involved so much in volleyball that was his new emphasis. And I think Chad did one last year of Grand Canyon State Games before it all stopped.
Yeah.
So, but I feel it's necessary to give that recognition to Michael Carrington for doing what he did out in Arizona, not only for the Grand Canyon State Games, but he had a couple other tournaments that he ran. I think there was a $10,000 tournament that he also ran outside
that was Ed Raymer.
Yeah, that was Phoenix Dodgeball. So,
but I will say that Grand Canyon State Games was one of the first all-women's divisions, and that forever I will be thankful for Mike.
Yeah, that was another thing that I brought to the table too. So real quick, AZ Dodgeball would not exist without Sam Hewitt. I know I made that sideways comment about we don't mention that name, but we really owe a lot to him, just like we would look to like the NBL.
Absolutely.
But Michael Carrington definitely took that and turned it into what you guys were coming down, for 5-6 hour drives to make happen. And then in addition to that, Ed Raymer, Ryan Anderson, Forrest, I can't think of his last name right now, but a lot of guys. What's that? What's that?
Forrest Griffin.
Wow.
He's a
Sins.
Nice. Yeah. So those people made Phoenix Dodgeball, and so that's why you're talking about like the 10K showdown that took place in 2012. But really, a lot of it comes to Michael Carrington just really communicating, reaching out to people, talking with Ed Prentice, getting them to come out here and make, I guess I won't say like jumpstart Arizona Dodgeball and make it, give you guys that other thing to look out for, to seek that competition before Vegas would come up again in August, September timeframe.
Yeah, that was definitely something that we always looked forward to in California. We had NDL, which was great, which brought a lot of teams from all over, but there wasn't really anything in California necessarily that was bringing us all together. And so I remember the first
time. It wasn't until NLA started doing
right, and that was later when Justin and I got involved in NLA that we kind of started pushing more of that. And so it was Grand Canyon State Games, and then NLA started doing their different championships, whether it was Oktoberfest or their Dodgetoberfest and all kinds of different things that brought more teams together. Yeah, did you have something to say about that, Mark?
Oh, I can't remember who told me. Someone told me recently. They were like, yeah, I just remember someone from NLA being like, man, whatever Mark Akam's doing, that's not going to last. It's not going to make it.
Well, people like to talk.
I mean, I got a funny story. Maybe we'll get to it later on in the podcast when we get a little bit when we move forward into the more recent years of
when we started graying.
When Mark first actually came to me during an NDL tournament and pitched the whole Elite thing. I have a great story about that. So
wow, I'm interested
in hour 3.4.
Let's take a quick break. Because God, there's so much to cover, and I feel like we should do.
We haven't even gotten to 2009.
So, believe it or not, we actually recorded about 3.5 hours of reminiscing and attempts to paint the pre-Elite, pre-USA, pre-Worlds dodgeball scenes. And due to time constraints on my end, actually, I went ahead and decided to go ahead and split this episode into two right after we took that first break. I really like the OG panel idea, so thank you so much, Joseph Colella, for coming to me during round one back in March to pitch your idea, and for helping me flesh it out over the course of the remaining West Series rounds of Elite. While I am kind of bummed it took so long to finally happen, I definitely am not somebody that likes to say, yeah, we'll get to that later, but I feel like the best things come naturally, and so with that, we were able to come together at a perfect time. Right after the Elite Nationals, and some time has passed since then, since we recorded that first episode. However, the stories, names, and memories that we did capture, I feel, are timeless. So just glad that we were able to make that happen. Huge thank you and shout out to Mark Akam, Kelly Salamoni, Serge Ferrari, and of course Joseph Colella for actually following through with the idea and not just pitching it, and for spending your Friday evening with me and delving into the past. If you know me, you know that's something I really enjoy doing, maybe too much. Anyway, if you're an OG or consider yourself an OG or know of any OGs, especially in other regions, please let me know. I would love for this to kind of take on a mini series of its own and just hear the stories of how dodgeball began from other perspectives. This is a story that's just not beholden to the West Coast or West Coast players. So, East, North, South, Northwest, I'm looking at you guys. Plus, if you guys like the format of, having the panelists have a little bit of some libations while this is taking place, and that hopefully laid back, relaxed atmosphere, I'm down to make that happen more and more. So, let me know. In the meantime, stay tuned next week for the second half of the OG Series West panel. I think we might have actually gotten to 2010, so we'll see. But until then, have a great rest of your evening, a great weekend, and we'll see you next time. Joe Colella, right? Colella?
Yes, Colella.
Colella. I'm actually going to try to say it right this time.
Are you going to say Mark's name right?
Probably not. I'm not even going to jinx myself, but okay. So let's attempt this in 3, 2, 1.